pandemic has focused the minds of governments and banks and businesses all over the world, not only on beating the health challenge of COVID, but on economic recovery. And it's universally accepted that this has to be a green recovery, one which works for people and planet.
When it comes to climate change, there is no vaccine that can save us. We must take fundamental changes in the ways we live, we produce, we consume. Our environment, our health, and our economies are closely linked. This is why we need our economic recovery to be a green economic recovery. Greece is determined to take advantage of this opportunity and also to take advantage of the decisions taken in Brussels recently regarding the Resilience and Recovery Fund to place sustainability at the core of its economic model.
It's very impressive, and I congratulate you. Greece has a serious emissions reduction target, a really serious renewables opportunity and commitment. The coal announcement and the joining of the UK and Canada's Powering Past Coal Alliance and the commitments to phasing out coal are crucial signals to the rest of the world. We need your support, and we need your collaboration. The terrible COVID crisis, the only way we can really look at this is that we must not, there is a saying, we must not waste the crisis. If we don't come out of this crisis with a greener and more resilient infrastructure and investment, the sheer statistics about what that means for whether we can tackle climate change, it makes it very, very hard, if not impossible. So there is only one way through, and the recovery plan that the Minister talked about and that Greece is taking part of is a fantastic step.
Now, whether it's loss of biodiversity or climate change, we all know we're facing a planetary emergency. And the outbreak and the spreading of the COVID-19 pandemic is a harsh reminder that something has gone very wrong in the way humanity exploits natural systems.
It's a very useful framework for the discussion, for which I'm joined by 4 participants.
How can we work with nature as part of developments? How can we work with nature in cities? And how can we be really innovative in our greening? How can we be transformational in our greening?
Obviously, finance is the fuel behind the recovery. And I agree with the previous speaker that it's not about spending money, but properly investing the money that's being given.
And a big part of this story is about, generating some kind of sort of framing a vision of the benefits of a post-COVID growth strategy that generates sustainable, inclusive and resilient growth. Now each country has its own ways of doing that.
So welcome everybody. This is the second part of a 2-part series. Last week's was more reflective, looking at how we'd responded to COVID-19. And today we're going to be more forward-looking and thinking about a green recovery. And our exam questions for today are essentially, how can we transform the financial services sector so that it embeds nature into its decision-making? And let's call that greening finance. Our second question is really to address how the finance sector can drive a green economy or drive the transformation to a green economy. And let's call that financing the green.
As I see it, COVID-19 is a health crisis, but also an economic crisis. But it does, of course, exist within the even larger unfolding crisis of climate change. The two are intertwined, of course. Evidence suggests it was our relationship, some would say our reckless relationship with nature, that allowed COVID to transmit to humans. And indeed, the way in which we recover from it will have profound implications for the natural world and wider environment, and ultimately, the long-term sustainability of our planet. For the financial services sector, and for businesses all over the world, there is an economic as well as a moral imperative to address this.
COVID and climate change crises are interlinked, as the scale and nature of the economic policy decisions being made now will gradually affect climate outcomes far into the future. The pandemic adds to the urgency of addressing it. What is understandable is that there is no contradiction between sustainability and economic growth. For private investors to fund the transition to the low carbon economy, we need to put in place the right conditions and incentives.
The COVID-19 pandemic has created unprecedented conditions that have brought into the fore another emergency, the so-called climate emergency. The current crisis presents a Hamiltonian opportunity, I would say, for building back better, offering the double benefit of a green recovery by transitioning to a carbon neutral economy, adapting to climate change, creating resilient infrastructures, altering the way we generate and consume energy, exploring new clean technologies, moving to circular economy patterns of production and consumption, advancing green fintech, etc. The experience of COVID-19 has already provided a critical key lesson. The cost of doing nothing is just too high.
Let's move on to the panel session.
Now, we've always known that finance is the key mover for economic development. If the low carbon revolution is to take place within the time frame required, the revolution needs to take place yesterday in the financial system.
And I think the really important dynamic here is that by holding financial institutions to account to demonstrate how they're navigating climate change and this net zero transition, that in turn should foster the right conversations, the right incentives, as people mentioned before, and the strategic thinking that supports the real economy and the business community in particular to respond strategically to manage the risk and capture the opportunities from this dual challenge of climate change and net zero transition.
If we take the EU ambition correctly, 55% reduction in the next 10 years, a massive shift to renewables and also energy efficiency. So this is the kind of nature of the challenge ahead of us. And what we're asking really is for the finance sector to step up to that challenge and to play its part.
The European Recovery Plan was set up as a response to the COVID experience in the European Union. And this provides a unique opportunity, I think, for the Greek economy to redirect its investments towards green and sustainable investments.